Okay, so this is episode 58 of the Illegitimate Scholar podcast. I'm not going to do it normally because I am live on YouTube right now, and I'm going to drop this on the on the audio version on Tuesday. But I should tell you guys, like the coordinating interviews has been a little bit more difficult than I thought. So for now, I'm going to do every 2 weeks an episode. Definitely, I might like depending on how many I can get in, I might some weeks not I might have an extra episode in there, but regardless, there's going to be stuff on the YouTube every week. So always check the YouTube. If you're just listening audio, hop on the YouTube and subscribe. I'm doing a lot of stuff there. The audience is bigger on the YouTube now. And yeah, so this is WBS Apparel, White Boy Summer Apparel. Well, it's Max from White Boy Summer Apparel. They sponsor, I mean, I'll let you go, but like you guys, I learned about you from Bog Beef and Marbleck, the good old boys. But I know now you've expanded pretty quickly. So you want to talk about that? You want to introduce yourself however you want. Do a plug at the beginning so it's out of the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, more later.
I'm Max Taylor. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of WBS Apparel. We are the Hugo Boss of the next regime, and we have been helping a lot of guys in our sphere monetize. It's been something that's been lacking because print-on-demand companies are pretty shitty overall. So we've been kind of filling that gap, and it's been going really well in terms of just helping our guys sell merch to their fans and just making really high-quality stuff that everybody enjoys. And everything's been going really well. I'll just list off our partners for everybody like listening right now. But we have Tom, the outgoing misanthrope. He's got the Americana shirt. Napoleon Bonaparte. He's got the first Napoleon merch out there, and that's been selling really well. People really like that. Axios Fitness with JD has been going great. Archcast, Warhammer stuff, that's been going great as well. Good Old Boys were our first partner, and that's been selling awesome, and it's been a great partnership. Dan Baltic and the Nut Army Elite. And the newest addition has been the Pony Express Radio shirt, and that's with the Old Glory Club. So that's been going well also. So
Okay,
it's great to like help our guys out and get involved with a lot of different little bubbles within our sphere. So yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. And it's hard to say something, completely forgot what it was. It makes it easier. The money flows, between our communities instead of like out to whoever else, these big conglomerates, big companies. It flows back and forth. That's a big thing. Like in most native cultures, like most older cultures, they're doing business in their own area, but now it's a bigger issue in certain areas than others. But it's like, the money leaves the area and it goes to these multinational corporations. And
yeah,
that's what we don't want. Hey, JC, can you tell me how my audio is? What's up, Craig? I didn't even notice you were there yet. But someone in the comments, let me know. We are live on YouTube right now and on Twitter. But this will be on audio as well. So, okay. And also, WBS Apparel, if we can figure out what I would have for merch, because obviously I don't ever wear t-shirts, so I'm not going to sell a t-shirt with something on it. That just wouldn't make any sense. But I'd love to hear from you guys, if you're listening to this or if you're live, on what type of merch you'd like to see. We bounced a couple ideas. Doesn't necessarily have to be shirts or clothing at all. You guys do other forms of merch, but it's it can be something. So whatever ideas you have for anything, let me know. I'd love to do it.
I was thinking about something actually today, and maybe some like lighters is something I've been thinking about, and that kind of thing. And we have a friend that does laser engraving stuff, so maybe some more esoteric symbols, perhaps. But
yeah,
well, just one little idea I had. But I'm sure the chat knows you better than I know you too, because they're your fans. So
yeah,
out as well.
So maybe like a banana paperweight, but that doesn't really go with it. Yeah, the banana is a thing that I do. So one of the things that I want to ask you about is this situation with the Warhammer thing. Mm-hmm. So you guys made a Warhammer shirt, right? And there's some other stuff going on. Can you explain that situation? Because I think that's pretty
Yeah.
interesting.
So essentially, it's some online drama, but we paired with Arch due to realizing that he was a defender of the lore of Warhammer, and we have a lot of guys on the WBS team that are very like have been in Warhammer for a long time, over 10 years. So essentially what's been going on in the background of Games Workshop, which owns the intellectual property rights to all the Warhammer stuff, is they've been doing a lot of the stuff you see with the other corporations that with other similar nerd hobbies such as Dungeons and Dragons and that kind of thing. And they're moving the lore in a more quote unquote woke direction. And guys like Arch and Sargon are obviously like pushing back on that kind of thing. So Warhammer is an extremely difficult hobby to do this with because it's essentially a hobby about space Nazis. Like these guys are out here like
Oh, this is 40K.
40K, yeah.
Okay,
40K,
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, they're out there like conquering the galaxy and all that. So there's not really like too much a touchy-feely real spin you can do on that. There's a God Emperor, this about monarchy and the divine right to rule and such. So there's not much wiggle room really there for the more egalitarian perspective, I guess you could say. So they've been trying for years to kind of like worm their way in with this ideology that we're dealing with. And recently, the kind of shot across the bow, if you will, was there's these custodes, and they claimed that they've always been female all of a sudden because they realized like they were just gonna have to lie. Like they realized they couldn't like rewrite the books that have established the lore over decades and that kind of thing. So just one day the Warhammer, official Twitter account announces that they've always been female.
What? Who are these? Who are the things that are now female?
They're one of the variations of like the different character, like playable character, like pieces that are in there. So there's like, so they're essentially just saying, okay, we know we couldn't do this by writing. Nobody's going to sit there and write a whole new set of lore just to, worm this little detail into here. But we can just go on Twitter and say, oh no, like that's always been the case. And yeah, people were pretty upset about it. And then it's funny because the like woke hammer people, quote unquote, have been trying to pull this shit for a while. It's not just the Custodes drama. And the issue is they saw our shirt and thought that was directly connected, which is not.
Directly connected to what?
To that drama. They thought we put out the shirt because of that specifically. But the reason why we put out that shirt is because a lot of guys like Arch recognized that the hobby and the lore was under attack. So it was saying, hey, you gatekeep or you be gate kept. There's no middle ground, essentially. Like you either protect the lore and the history of your hobby or it's destroyed by bad actors. Like there's no middle stance in that. Yeah.
I mean, we've seen what happened to Star Wars. Put a chick in it and make her gay. Although that actually, I don't think that ever happened in that specific situation, but it is a funny tagline. Are these the things you're talking about? They turned these guys into women?
Yeah, that's
why.
Yeah, that's the same armor and everything. I think because you can kind of like argue of the gender ambiguity with the armor.
But aren't there like already women? Like
there's already they've already kind of put women into it from my understanding. And honestly, I'm not the best of the WBS team to kind of like hear explaining the lore because I'm more of the like casual observers of Warhammer, but this is kind of my basic understanding of the drama.
I guess like, yeah, maybe if someone else knows something about that, it's okay that you don't. I don't know anything about it either. I played a little Warhammer, not miniatures, but Total War. But that's like the fantasy stuff, which I'm more interested in. And there's women in that one. So I That's super weird. Why they would like not make a new female character? It's colonization basically. It's colonization of gamer spaces, and we're not going to stand for it. We're going to gatekeep. I have no horse in that race because I don't care about Warhammer 40K at all. But what I do care about is stopping the feminization of literally everything in society down to autistic miniatures games. It's insane. Like I know the whole gamer freaking G word thing is a joke, but it's kind of not.
Yeah. There's been a lot of hobbies that you've kind of seen this going on with over the past several years. And it's like, what are you going to do once these people are integrated into these different companies? They're going to want to put their ideology into everything because that's the total revolution that's going on.
Yeah. God damn, man. It's nothing sacred anymore. They're even taking our autistic miniatures games. Okay, so what I want to talk about also as an overarching theme is like the position of a merch company in the greater culture. Because I think that a lot of these pop culture things today, a lot of the nerd culture is so left coded. And it didn't used to be. But the space has clearly been, for anybody familiar with it, it's clearly been taken over. Like there are these images of looking back to Comic-Con in like the early 2000s, and it's like hot cosplaying women, and now that's like seen as offensive. And I'm sure like working there rather than, obviously the women that go there are going to do their own thing. But there's a different feeling in it. So when you Okay, no, you know what? Here, why did you start this company? How did this come about?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
So Chet and I, actually, we always have a White Boy Summer party every year. And last year, we were like, oh, let's do something special. Let's make something to remember it by. It's always a great time. And a lot of people come. And we just like, okay, we'll make hats because they're a memento, kind of thing. And Chet had a lot of experience with business, with merchandise and all of that. And we got these hats manufactured, and they're the Pepe hats that you see, trucker hats on the website. They were the first product we ever made. But we made a limited run just for the party, and everybody loved them. They're like, oh, this is so comfortable. And we were out on the town, and everybody was coming up to us that had no idea what Pepe or frog culture was whatsoever. And they're like, oh, that's awesome. I would buy that kind of thing. And we're like, kind of have that light bulb moment where we look at each other. Like, hey, I mean, this might have legs. Nobody else is really doing that. Nobody really, because we were aware of drop shipping and print on demand companies at the time. We were like, there's nobody really that has a legitimate business with this. There's like low effort things, but there's nobody that really knows what they're doing necessarily with this. So it seemed like a good little gap to shoot through, and it seems like we were right in our instincts with that.
Yeah. So. Yeah, the merch always feels so like it's so fake to me. It's so mass produced. Adding on a personal aspect to it is huge. I wouldn't even consider it if it wasn't done like this. So I tried to go to the website. Is the website down right now?
WBSapparel.com. Let me check. Should be fine.
Maybe I'm going to the wrong place. And the link isn't showing up in my thing. I don't want to.
Looks like it's good.
Oh no, I got it.
Okay.
There's something else. White Boy Summer, like maybe spelled out. Yeah, I want to pull this up. Although if you're listening, you got to go to the YouTube. Yeah, the Americana shirt. I've seen that one.
So I also had a background in photography.
The Napoleon shirt. Okay.
Yeah. I also had a background in photography before we started the business, and I've learned more since. So it was a good marriage between Chet and I's skills and starting the business and everything. So
yeah, you have more than I realized you did. Oh, these sunglasses are great, right?
Dude, they've been selling really good. Yeah.
Only $35. Oh,
yeah, they're very affordable compared to most of the polarized stuff you see out there.
Wow.
So we're really not trying to like get one over on anybody. Like it's just putting out good stuff for the sphere.
Yeah. I love this
This
gatekeep
is the
always.
source. This is the source of all the drama. Yeah, this one right here.
Was this made for a specific creator?
Arch, we made this, or Arch made the design, and we got it manufactured for him. Yeah,
Okay, so who's Arch is like a Bucky's hat. Nice.
Archcast. Yeah,
Dude, your actors, your models are hilarious. They're perfect. That's our guys, man. That's sick.
it's our guys. It's the Amerikaner, you know, that we're hiring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sick. The East German camouflage right there. That's awesome.
Yeah, we also have the. I think I told you maybe this week. Sorry if I didn't, but we're getting Rhodesia shorts manufactured.
Yeah, you did tell me that. Yeah, dude, I want those.
That's generated a lot of hype, and we're hoping to get those ordered and get them over in the next month. So, next month or so, definitely in summer is when we'll have those in hand, most likely. So that's like a lot of people like that because everybody knows the memes, but never said, "Oh, wouldn't that be cool if somebody actually made those?" Like, yeah, well, that's actually gonna make them. So,
Yeah.
somebody's got to go do something.
Long Kennesaw. Sick. Is my audio hiss better?
No, it sounds good.
Okay. Somebody in the comments said there was audio hiss. Oh my god, dude, this picture. It's AI. That's amazing. I'm here.
Yeah, our co-owner Jim, he makes the website, and he does a really good job with that.
Dude, okay. Oh, the cart. Put it back. Put the cart back.
Dude, they're sold out. Except we have 2 smalls left, but it's hard to sell to little people with this stuff because our guys are yoked chuds, and they're all chud maxing. So,
Man.
but some of these guys have girlfriends they're buying the smalls for. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Man, I guess I've got audio hiss, and it's been going on for a long time. Multiple streams. That's not good. I'm not a professional. I'm really bad at this. The manlet market. You need to appeal to the manlet market. I know some from the Marine Corps that are very manlet type dudes. I love the Napoleon shirt here as well.
Yeah, that one's been doing really well. We met up with some reenactors in the area to take these shots too. They let us set up their little gear and all of that. So
wow, dude,
yeah,
that's awesome. That's fantastic. Getting out and doing stuff. That's the best. Like I love doing this, but like anybody doing their own thing is absolutely awesome. I think it's fantastic what you guys are doing. It's crazy that it's like, you know, it's so much more like a classic company. Like we've come full circle. It's like everything got super techy, super complicated, and super like streamlined down to where like the merch is mass produced and created, and then you go back around to the other side and you're just doing like, you know, regular old relationship building and working with people that you want to work with and producing things that you want to produce, and it works as a business model. It's timeless, and absolutely it was awesome for you to
I think
recognize that.
The internet is such an amazing tool. There's obviously downsides to it and everything, but I've been shocked of even when we started out at literally 0 followers and just like grinded since last year, and just the awesome people that have responded to us when we were at 200 followers or whatever, and everybody that hears what we're trying to do wants to help us out, which is awesome because I think everybody recognizes it's time to for us to start building because nobody's going to do anything for us. And
it's a Meta Prime thing, right? It's parallel institutions.
Yeah, and Meta's been helping us out with a lot of stuff. He's been doing great work.
Yeah, Meta's the best. Is this the Pepe hat you were talking about with the?
Yeah, go down a little bit. There's a little bit more. Yeah, the trucker hat. There it is. That's
okay.
That's it. Yeah.
That's
Then we have like a good amount of colors, and they're all selling. The I think the chocolate chip camo might be sold out. That was the most popular one, but everybody loves chocolate chip.
Yeah, they do. I have a picture of me. I'm not going to pull it up right now because I'm not going to spend the time trying to find it. But when I was in the Marine Corps, I did like one. I got like sent off to play a terrorist as like for another unit that was deploying for like 30 days, So I was wearing chocolate chip camo the whole time. I have a picture of me in a fake RPG sitting there on the camo. You do have good design names. No, it's solid, man. It's absolutely solid. Okay, so you start this company. You reach out. Bog Beef is your first customer. I'm sure or Bog Beef and Marbleck rather. Sorry, Marbleck.
Yeah.
Good old boys. And from there, what's the expansion like? What do you concentrate on next? I might get too into the business here just because I love business.
No, that's cool. Like entrepreneurship is really important to kind of show the nitty gritty with everybody. But I joined a lot of this stuff was simultaneous because we were just doing a lot at the same time for sure. But I joined Exit Group, run by Bennett, good man. And he helped me out a lot in terms of like just point us in the right directions and who else was interested and all that. And
what is this Exit Group?
Exit Group, yeah, they're it's for guys who want. It's generally for tech guys, I would say, that are interested in entrepreneurship and parallel systems building and that kind of thing. And Bennett started it several years ago, and it's been going well. They've funded a lot of projects for guys and a lot of great stuff going on with all that whole network.
They funded projects.
Yeah, they fund projects, but it's also skill building techniques, and there's
so they consult as well as
yeah. So you can run into marketing guys there. You can run into finance guys there. So I think they funded a movie last year, which are like pretty impressive budget. So there's a lot of cool stuff all of those guys are doing. And it's like a digital fraternity, I would say. It's not as there's meetups and things like that. But generally it's a lot of Zoom calls of high quality people just like talking shit out is generally the what's actually going on. So
yeah. No, I he's coming on my podcast soon, but I'm in for specifically Twitter. I am in a group with Art of Purpose, who's a guy on Twitter. He's Catholic, I want to say Catholic, pretty conservative, quit teaching, and now he does Twitter stuff. And I'm heavily in his community. Really like the guy, really like what he does, and he wants to come on my podcast. He brought it up to me. I wouldn't even ask him just because I wouldn't expect him to do that. But he was like, "Oh, I'll come on your podcast." It's like, okay, like he's like this is the guy that charges several $100s for, and it's well worth it. Frankly, he's exceptional at Twitter for consulting calls. So the fact that he would come on is awesome. But yeah, Craig in the comments saying we need Ill Scholar merch. Look, I'm with you, Craig. I can't sell a t-shirt because I don't wear t-shirts, and we have some other ideas, but I need ideas from you guys. So again, please in the comments right now, in the Discord later. WBS Apparel now in the Discord does have his own channel. So, for merch, which is basically his. So check that out. Yeah, we're expanding. I'm going to be doing an episode with Axios JD Sturker, who you also work with. It's been great having a group of guys like-minded, to a certain extent, individuals, I should say, because there's some people I talk to that I maybe don't have as extreme views as, and that's become pretty relevant. Pretty often, but it's fine. It doesn't bother me, especially with the types of things going on in the world right now. It doesn't seem, things that might have seemed extreme a few years ago no longer seem extreme.
By the way, I wanted to ask you, did you see the Joe Rogan recent interview with the archaeologists? Having the little debate. I saw you posting about that.
Yeah, did I see that in the comments? Yeah, dude. I streamed in 3 parts. It was a 4.5 hour episode. We did 3 parts, and I think the total runtime was 6.5, 7 hours of that content. And I have been since then arguing on Twitter with archaeologists, posting things about how Flint Dibble lied. Yeah, like no, that's a huge thing in the niche, in the anthropology niche. Someone says, I'd never seen you so angry as you were at that guy on Joe Rogan. Yeah, no, that's fully legit, man. Like usually in my own personal life, I've had a bit of a temper, but not really anymore. But like on the podcast, I am not like that. But I got pissed. I at one point I was like screaming at the camera, like pointing, talking to Flint Dibble, even though he wasn't there. Um, which was legitimately me, like a little, like, you can control it, but I was losing my cool. It was like it wasn't getting out of control, but like it's not like I planned to do that, right? It like
Yeah.
came out. I was mad, and then I got right back into what I was doing, but I had to, let it out a little bit. Yeah, Flint is insufferable, man. I mean, he's the image of this mainstream academia that I hate so much. I mean, it's part of it. And they like I try to be nice to these people, like, but they don't meet you halfway. There's almost like there's like a built-in condescension that comes with somebody who is so deep ingrained in that socialization that comes with these universities, and they have a certain way of viewing information. And in my opinion, I think they're extremely they have tunnel vision towards their own view, and they have a I can hear the typing, by the way.
Sorry.
That's going to come in. No, it's all right. It's all right. Just I don't know if that's a setting you can change or not.
Yeah, I turned off.
Mechanical keyboard, huh? Yeah. Sorry, what was I saying?
You're talking about
Flint
the
Dibble, yeah.
academia problems that are going on with archaeology and other like sciences such as that.
Yeah. Where is this you typing this out, or is this your boy?
No, that's one of the team members.
Yeah. Thought so. Well, think about you trying to erase these native people's cultures. Yeah, Flint Dibble at one point, like, he accused the thing I found out, I should tweet about this. Flint Dibble, the accusation of like him being connected to Nazis is because of like 2 lines in a book from 1995, the year I was born. Like that's how dumb this was. Is that like, and he really, really attacked Graham. Like it's insane, and he was so arrogant. And yeah, I don't like these people. And I've been arguing. I'm not going to give this guy. Not even going to say his name, but if you're on Twitter, you've probably seen me arguing with him. There's an archaeologist. He's at Southern Connecticut, and he is a guy who, like, I found out after arguing with him a little bit. I was being polite to this dude. I was like calling him out on being rude. I'm like, look, man, I'm not trying to be antagonistic to you. I told him this. And he has worked, like, he's published papers that reference archaeological work that I did. Like, when I say I did it, like, I was one of the many people working on it. Like, I never even went to grad school or anything. I don't plan on it because I don't see why. It seems like, well, actually, I did go to grad school. I quit grad school, but that was a master's in education. I would consider a master's in anthropology more than a master's in education. But regardless, like he has papers with like people that I know, like other professors at UConn that I know. I worked on these sites that he's referencing, and he's still just being a dick to me. I even reached out to him in DMs, but they're not interested.
Yeah,
unless
they don't think you're legit. Like, if you can't advance their position, then why are you even talking to me, bro? Kind of thing.
I'm an illegitimate scholar, huh?
I've lived in the DC area pretty much my whole life, so it's the center of the cancer, and you run into a lot of types like that.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, he didn't man up to anything. He was such a weasel. Fully agrees. A little snake. Flint Dibble has me blocked on Twitter. He has for a long time. I still talk a lot of crap about him, and I'll still comment below his posts just on like other posts of other people. Partly just being like, hey, like I'll leave the screenshots of him, which he denied, about associating Graham. He's like doing this word sorcery to make it look like he didn't, because he chose his words very carefully. But he very clearly associated Graham with Nazism and white supremacy. And the Nazi thing was like based on 2 lines from a book in 1995. That's how dumb this is. And I found a documentary. There's a documentary from 1988 that's about how after Margaret Mead, who was a very famous cultural anthropologist, died, there was some issues with her with her book, with her some of her research. She did participant observation on this culture, wrote this story, or wrote this book based on it. Coming of age in Samoa. It was very popular in the 60s, although it was written in 1928. And it was about how, oh, there's all this free love there, but there wasn't. Or maybe there was, and the native people that came out later and told her, no, this is, or like told other people, this is BS. I don't want to get too far into it. So,
No, I got you.
but people like, I'm gonna do a stream on that is what I'm saying. We're gonna watch the whole. I think it's up on YouTube, so it should be fine to stream to.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's some stuff in archaeology. Like academia can be like this in general, but anthropology and archaeology specifically are really, really, really bad about how they have their old boys club. And you know, the old boys club now includes women, but like same basic idea, right? They're not letting other people in. They're gatekeeping, but in a bad way. They're gatekeeping the wrong things, and that's why university trust in public universities in the United States is the lowest right now that it's ever been, as far back as the data has been collected, which I think is like the 60s.
Yeah,
And that's how bad it is.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you. So, I've always been interested in this kind of stuff. My grandfather had Graham Hancock's books, and I read those and everything. Always loved that stuff and found it very fascinating. Even if I don't agree with Graham on everything, I found a lot of the stuff amazing that he writes about and just opens up a whole new door. But my question to you is like, with your experience, kind of what if I were to ask you for a favor, like tell me how to go up to a random person I'm talking to and having a beer with at the bar and give them an anecdote like, hey, here's how fucked like archaeology and that kind of thing is, especially from your experience dealing with personally with these people. Because you can get into the whole theory and the books and all of that, but like probably just an anecdote to point people like, hey, this is what I saw. Like this is real of what's going on, kind of thing.
Okay.
That makes it tangible to like the average person.
The
You know what I
first
mean?
three things that I can think of are number one, people think the pyramid is a tomb. It's not. There was like one body found in like a side in a side thing in a side. I don't know what the word is.
Chamber.
Yeah, a side chamber. The main chamber. There's no bodies ever found in the main chamber. Of course, they'll just say that it was ransacked long ago, but there's no evidence there was ever a body there in like the main chambers. It's only like in the side. And if I remember correctly, don't quote me on this. That side part, it wasn't. That side part was like that. It's archaeologically dated to well after the pyramid was made. So that's one thing to tell you. Like everyone thinks it's a pyramid, or everyone thinks it's a tomb. It was built as a tomb, but the evidence for that is not strong, and in fact, it's not the most likely case. The other thing is that there is a large civilization in the Amazon, and there was an archaeological find earlier this year, just in January. I think it's the pinned tweet on my profile actually, but it's there was a new civilization. Like this had been theorized for like 500 years. There was one conquistador who went down the Amazon River, and documented all this stuff, and it's the only source on it because no one went back there for like 80 years. And 80 years later, the entire population of the Americas had collapsed to a fraction of what it was, not from actual killing violence, but from the diseases. Most of the deaths were from the diseases, which is insane when you think about how many deaths were caused by violence, which is a lot on its own, but several times more, several orders of magnitude more died of these diseases without ever seeing a European person because it just spread in.
Like
everywhere.
Smallpox, tuberculosis, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. I think smallpox is generally the main one. Sometimes they don't even really know what did it. But yeah, no one went back to the Amazon for 100 years. And then people go looking for this thing, and they're like, "Oh, the guy must have been lying. There's nobody here." And then come to find out, 400, 300 years later, we figure out, oh, there were a lot more people here, and they all just died of the diseases that were introduced that they had no protection to. Like that's very real. The estimates for the population of the Americas is like 50 to 100 million. Prior to the it's really hard to tell because like the ways of life were very, very different of the populations we do know because they didn't have pack animals. Um, well, they had llamas, but that's like just in the Incas area. They didn't have as much. They had more dense cities than Europe and Asia because there weren't
Yeah.
any animals,
Mhm.
biomass type shit. But that's one. There is, and it was found, and this was denied for most of our lives, that this was a thing. And then the other one I would say is that there is Austronesian DNA found in people in South America. There's DNA from Aboriginal Australians found in South America somehow.
Interesting.
So that's the thing.
I know there was definitely even mainstream archaeologists, wouldn't they acknowledge that there was contact between the Polynesians and South America? Or is that
Hmm.
kind of disputed with them?
No, so as far as I know, the evidence of that is that I did something on this recently. The evidence of that is that between um, Hawaii, no, not Hawaii, Rapa Nui, which is Easter Island, the place with the moai, the
Oh
big
yeah.
heads.
Hmm.
Um, the thing with that is that there is shared um, there is shared domesticated plants that you can find between Rapa Nui and South America directly east. And there was a recent archaeological find where they just published the content. They just published the paper, and I read it. I did a thread on it, I think. I don't remember the specifics. I don't want to. I don't want to speculate. But there's several species found. The thing is, they don't know that there's. Oh, you know what? This site was dated to a certain time that was like really close to European colonization. Because then there's this
Hmm.
theory. There's a couple theories where like, oh, maybe it's not a record of contact because maybe they came from like birds or like floated. Like that's very possible. That
Yeah,
does happen, but it's a
that
very
makes
far
sense.
distance.
Yeah.
And then the other explanation is like, oh, the Europeans opened the trade routes, so we need to date something to prior to European colonization that to prove that they were there before that they went there. But you know that one's not really that far fetched, just because we know that the Polynesians could go thousands of miles in open ocean and find these far flung islands like Rapa
Yeah.
Nui is in Rapa Nui, Hawaii. They're in New Zealand, they're incredibly remote from these other places where they lived. I mean, they're way out there. They had this skill, so it's completely like in the realm of possibility that they went to South America. It's just that I think it would be harder to prove that they went back, and they
Yeah.
totally could have, but there isn't hard evidence for that. This information might give us hard evidence, but it's very new.
It makes sense if they would stay when they get there though, because South America is pretty it's doing pretty well in terms of like fauna and things like that compared to the islands. So I don't
Yeah,
yeah, sure they could establish trade routes and that kind of thing, but I'm sure that would have been difficult. I'm sure there's issues with the empire that built the Easter Islands heads
it's
and
not
all
really
of
an
that,
empire,
you know.
but
Yeah,
yeah.
quote unquote, you know.
Mhm.
But yeah, uh, so yeah, I could definitely see them making their way there and probably staying if they actually got there.
Yeah, well, it's we don't like. There's much less evidence for South American seafaring. I should be more familiar with it, but as far as I know, they didn't go very far.
Hmm.
I mean, the Pacific Northwest, they built giant dugout canoes out of redwood trees. It's crazy. Um, but check these out. These are the Olmec heads. And these are Olmec, which is a Mesoamerican, Central American civilization. And Flint Dibble refused to say what race he thought these inanimate objects were, but look, I don't care. I'm telling
Yeah,
you, that's a Bantu nose. This is a Bantu black face. This is a black
yeah.
face.
Hmm.
I mean, look, phenotypically, it's not the only explanation that there
Well,
were
look at the
blacks.
different. Look at the different ones he pulled up too. Like
Yeah,
there's some pretty. That's really interesting.
dude, like
Yeah.
I understand these people want to think that race doesn't exist, but when you look at it, oh my god, oops. Um. Oh, I can't do that. I'm gonna share it a different way.
Oh, God.
It's just like these are the types of things that happened here. These are the types of things that we like bring up, but you're like not allowed to talk about it in these terms. Like I'm somehow not supposed to just understand that people look different. Like I can tell the difference between a Korean and a Japanese person. So the fact that I would be able to look at something and be like, oh yeah, phenotypically, this is a Bantu black face. You just got to pretend you don't notice it. Like this is like 90s
I
color
think,
blindness.
yeah, I used to think in the same sense, like most of us have in that sense. But when I started doing some reading, I think the Aboriginal stuff was the biggest red pill for me because it's like these people, and there's populations in Africa like it too, and they're a relic of the past. They just are, and not that they're not a noble person, shouldn't be treated with respect or
Right.
anything, but to suggest that they're going to go, uh, you know, do rocket science or something is just ludicrous.
Yeah. Yeah. Seriously. But I want to like these are what I'm searching Bantu, but this is an Ethiopian person. That's yeah, Somalian.
Good luck on Google.
Oh yeah, that'll do it. What the heck is this? Let's go to DuckDuckGo. They just want you know what that is? They showed me like a bunch of other African ethnic groups
They
rather
will
than
show
Bantu.
it fair. What you have to do is you have to search by like very specific country. Like you have to search like
Oh.
Ethiopia. Yeah.
Oh, it's doing it here
That'll
too.
show the different phenotypes.
These are not
Or like Ghana, you know,
Oh yeah, yeah.
because
we'll do Ghana.
it'll bypass the filter that they're putting in. Yeah.
Okay, but like, look, this is a phenotypical thing. It's not, people have different faces. People have different skin colors. There are phenotypical differences between people, different cultures, different ethnicities have different heights, even within local areas.
Yeah.
So like, it's not crazy to be like, hey, I'm going to look at number one. What I'm implying here is that it's possible that Bantu people from West Africa got on a boat and sailed to Central America, which would be the biggest accomplishment that I'm aware of out of like this area. Like in my opinion, you know, these are non-linear things, so it's hard to compare them. But like, like I'm not supposed to say that, but I don't know of another phenotype like of another face that like has this nose.
So
Like it's flat and
yeah.
it flares, and that's a thing. That's just what it is.
What do you think? What would be the explanation for that population being there, in your opinion?
So the so it's the Olmecs, right? So it's very, very, very old, but the and it's not like a 100% hypothesis. It's really like really weird that these faces are there. They could have just made them awkward. They could have made them weird, and then just.
It's strange how they look very similar, though. Like,
I mean, it really looks like a Bantu face. It looks like a West African face. And if you take from West Africa, where these people live, where Bantu people are from, and you draw a line straight, and like this is where they used to sail straight into, the winds will carry you westward, and it's very hard to get back. So they might have managed to get there, and they weren't able to come back.
Yeah,
but I don't have an explanation. I don't know why.
It's fascinating.
I do know it's cool.
I know what's interesting is Thomas Sowell has an interesting monologue about Africa and its historical context. And one of the biggest slights he puts against Africans is like they never became seafaring. But it's interesting because it's sub-Saharan Africa has been referred to as a containment zone because of the desert, obviously, in the Sahara, but also because there's not really rivers that bring you out to the ocean, and it's very difficult. It would be very difficult to make your way north to Europe in the Mediterranean from like Western Africa. So it makes sense that you wouldn't really even have a population that would figure that out.
Seriously.
Like, in that area. So
like where are they going to go? There's no islands like the British Islands. There's no areas like Denmark that have a bunch of different islands. There's Madagascar, but that's so far south. The people there were like hunter gatherers.
Yeah.
I think sometimes what happens in like our space is that it is very true that like left wing liberals will completely overplay. They'll completely like blow up in proportion and lie about like what African kingdoms were able to accomplish, sub-Saharan African kingdoms. But at the same time, I actually think that there is a bit of downplaying on the other side in response, because it's not like they were doing nothing. I mean,
Yeah.
they were in kingdoms, they were creating stuff. But there would be no reason for them to be seafaring. I mean, where you do have it in the Horn of Africa,
Mhm.
but that's obviously like
Yeah.
Arab related. But that's where it makes sense. It doesn't
There's
make sense on the West
well,
Coast. There's nothing there.
there's a lot of fascinating history with Eastern Africa, and
Oh yeah.
especially so the Portuguese influence, but also the Muslim different caliphates influences in there.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if that's directly related to why they look differently than other Africans. I'm sure there's been a trading of genetics in that respective, but obviously everybody knows East Africans look different than West Africans and
Yeah, you go
in
to Minnesota,
general.
you can pick out a
So,
Somalian and Ethiopian very easily.
but there
Um,
was always the legend of what's the legend about the Christian king past
Hmm.
like that people didn't know about that and
John Proctor.
uh yeah, what was sorry, it's slipping my mind right now. Um, but
Um,
they, yeah, it was essentially a legend during the Crusades. Yeah, Prester
Prester
John.
John.
Yeah. So Prester John was a legend for thousands of years, essentially, that
Mhm.
especially after the Muslim conquests, is the
Right, because it
Christians
was cut off.
understood that the caliphate kind of cut Christendom in half, and that there was, obviously Byzantium survived for a while until the Ottomans took them out, but there was this kind of understanding, whether they really knew it or not, that there was a Christian kingdom beyond uh, the Saracens.
Yeah.
And I find that fascinating that the Portuguese eventually found Ethiopia. And when they found it, they were in the middle of a war with, I think, it's the Sultanate of Adal. Yeah, they were at war with. So, and they started participating in kind of the holy wars with
Really?
them. Yeah. So it's kind of like, honestly, to me, it seems like destiny that that kind of stuff happens.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
That's amazing.
very fascinating.
I heard
And
about this.
the Portuguese history of exploration is just amazing. And those guys,
Yeah, pretty
you
brutal
know,
at certain points, but yeah.
and the shenanigans they got into in India and other places like that are
I don't
all,
know a lot about the. I know a
yeah,
little bit. I know the bad stuff, but they
yeah,
were early. They were early, early.
they were, they were the trailblazers of colonialism. So
Dude.
I mean, they
Yeah,
were amazing. They were amazing at shipfaring, and the ships they built were phenomenal. Yeah.
absolutely. But it's like, it's 16th century stuff. So it's like people don't start paying attention, I think, in today's world. Like even the 17th century, people don't talk about as much, but like the 17th into the 18th century is where a lot more of our like history concentrates on. They concentrate on like the
Mm,
age of sail and the
okay.
pirates, and I think that's why, because like they they talk about, they do English history a lot in the United States. We do a lot of English history, which makes sense. We're an Anglo country. Pisses me off as a freaking nearly full-blooded Irish person, but um, it's the 16th century gets like almost completely ignored. Besides, like
Yeah.
a few weeks in one class in high school, I think.
Yeah. And it's a wild period. And just to be honest, full disclosure, like I got into this period of history because I played Paradox games and I played
Oh,
like EU4
me
and
too, dude.
everything, and I found it
Yeah.
fascinating. And they did a really good job covering that period in that game. And I read a lot of books. There's this book on my shelf right here, Ottoman Centuries, and very fascinating, covers like the rise when they were steppe herd until they were eventually, dismantled post World War One. So
Yeah.
very, very interesting empire.
Yeah.
They had obviously were Islamic, but they were definitely distinct from other caliphates and such, which makes them really interesting.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to come with them, like, you know, they adopted a lot of like Greek stuff. They,
Yeah.
wanted to be very Roman, and in a lot of ways they were. All right, I need to use the bathroom and
Go
then
ahead. Yeah.
come back. I'm gonna throw a Cleveland in there. I'm gonna edit this. Yeah, give me a couple minutes. And remember, in the chat, if you would like, or well, please give us merch ideas.
Yeah, type
Sure,
those
people
out
want
there,
merch.
guys.
Yeah.
We're gonna make illegitimate scholars and stuff. We're not gonna make T-shirts, but we'll make something that we think the audience will enjoy and will sell well, because we don't ever want to put anything out there that people aren't going to want to buy. So, yeah.
Okay, and I'm back.
What's
Pipes and bongs. God damn it! I don't want to be that guy. Were you saying something?
sorry? What?
I thought you started to say something.
Oh no, I'm good.
Okay. Somalians in particular are not considered Africans by most other Africans. Genetically, they're almost an entirely different race in comparison. Yeah, so the thing with Africa is that Africa is extraordinarily it's extraordinarily diverse racially and ethnically, because there was a longer period of development in Africa, and Africa is very, very large, and all continents are pretty diverse in their geography, but Africa really does have it all. So North Africa is definitely like its own, like culturally it's more related, and even racially and ethnically, like North Africans are Caucasian in that sense. Like even on the
Yeah,
US Census, they're Caucasian. I mean, they're the idea that Italians are white and then Moroccans are not white is stupid. It doesn't make
it's
any sense.
you know what's interesting is reading about the Carthaginian conflicts. There's not really a racial element. I mean,
No.
maybe in some sources, but they adopted Greek tactics. There was Greek generals in the Carthaginian army. The Mediterranean was extremely
Well,
connected.
wasn't it like a Greek, maybe Phoenician colony or something? Like it was
Yeah,
like
Phoenicians, which is where Bashar lives now, Syria. Those people colonized North Africa, and
yeah.
that's still the. I think that there's a very similar genetic component there still, but it changed after the Islamic conquests, when it became more Arabian because of the men that set out conquering after the and cut through Eastern Rome and established all the way to Spain, the Caliphate and all of that. So that kind of changed the genetic disposition of the area, from what I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to know what it was like. But sub-Saharan Africa specifically is very different. Like the Khoisan people are very, very different from the Khoisan people and the Bantu people, and these are large overarching groups. So there's many people within. The Khoisan is really two groups of people: the Khoi and the San, but they're related. Um, but these are large overarching groups, and they are like Khoisan are as different. They're more different from Bantu people than Europeans are from Asians. Like that's how big these differences are. Like East Asians. Yeah, the Boers. Yeah, the Boers are very different. Um, I would love a Rhodesia hat.
We have different Rhodesia patterns we're going to do on different products, so that might be a good illegitimate scholar product too. But
Yeah. I think a hat could work. I do wear hats. I mean, not on the
what kind of hat do you wear?
Well, I had this great Boston Red Sox hat with like flowers on it, but I flew out of a window. Which hat have I been wearing? I don't remember what hat I've been wearing. That's weird. I got it sitting down somewhere.
It's not
like
a
normal ball cap.
Well, I think I've seen a picture of you with not, I don't know if you call it fedora, but you're like one of the few people that doesn't look cringe with a hat like that. Is there? I don't know.
I don't know about
Well, that's
that.
more of an archaeologist hat, right? Like
yeah,
you wear out
there
on the
might be
dunes, something like that, like a bucket hat, I guess they call them. I don't know.
Oh, was it a
I could be
Marpat
making
one?
I could be making shit up right now. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't remember. No, I would normally wear just a normal ball cap. I have a lot of hats as well. Yeah. Now I'm just thinking about hats. I used to have this hat that I would wear, like it was from a brewing company. It had a bird on it. It's from some brewing company in Vermont. I wore it like trucker hat, and I wore it out.
Hats are good because they're like unisize is the biggest thing.
Yeah,
and like
as long as they're
because it's good. You don't like hold on to the, you might have some audiences that need an 8XL size, but most people just need the 2X's, like as large as they get. I'm sure the illegitimate scholar fans are all yoke chuds, so they probably just need like the XL. So
100%, every single one of them more autistic and more ripped than the last. That's how we do it. Yeah, all right. What else do you got? What else do you want to talk about? We're at an hour, but
okay. I mean, I'm down to go for more if you want to.
Yeah. You can.
I love history in general, if you couldn't tell. So, what's your favorite period of history? Like, I know you were talking about 17th century, like is generally your background and everything,
so
but
I have a couple of different like areas of background. And I think people have heard me say this pretty, disjointed. But altogether it's my degrees are in, I have 3 bachelor's degrees, which is stupid, but I do. Well, 2, and one of them's a double. So history and anthropology, and then education. I worked for a year at the New London County Historical Society, which is a maritime historical society, mostly lots of artifacts there, lots of 17th and 18th century stuff, which is what I'm interested in. Colonial New England, 17th, 18th century. It's what I've done archaeology on. I've also done archaeology on like paleo and earlier Native American stuff, but a lot of it on 17th and 18th century. Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah, I love the colonial period in the United States. I don't really do a lot of history that's after like War of 1812, basically, at least relatively to the other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty big in East Asia, so China. I'm a bit of a xenophile. I don't talk about it too much now. I haven't been into it too much recently, but I love Chinese history. And maritime as well. I know a lot of maritime stuff, and some of my archaeological, not actually doing the work, but classes were in maritime archaeology related to working down there. So yeah, maritime in general, 17th, 18th. Sorry.
Okay, cool. No, I'm sure you've probably read Guns, Germs, and Steel was like one of the first like history books I read when I was like very young. I just found the cover cool and read it, but it also set me on a journey as well. And I don't agree with everything he said in there, especially at this point, obviously, but it was very compelling at the time and there's still value there.
Yeah.
But something that really never sat right with me with his explanations of different things. And for the audience that's listening, essentially the premise of Guns, Germs, and Steel is, the different populations of the world had different outcomes due to geography, essentially, which is, there's definitely truth to that for sure.
I think everybody who listens to this podcast
Yeah.
knows about
Oh,
constructs
sorry.
and
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah. No, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
I did a whole episode on it with Bog Beef and Marbleck as well.
Oh, awesome.
On their show. But
So
yeah.
one of the explanations that never really sat right with me in there was like his section on China and why they never really, because China was kind of the center of the world up till the 15th century, right? I mean, they were innovative and, had a very well structured society and meritocratic rule for different elites and things like that. So there's certainly value to be learned, as you know, with that. But it never really sat right with me how he just kind of hand waves, oh well, there was an emperor in China, so the rule of China is just determined by the one guy who said, let's face inward. And then that's that. It just never really
so let's talk
was
about
compelling
this.
today. Yeah.
Let's talk about this. Yeah, so people have heard me talk about this before, but you're right. China was the center of the world, basically. But it was more like up until the 18th, 19th century. And so China was huge. Number one in East Asian languages, in some, like in Korean, in Japanese, in a couple other languages, the name of China is just the Middle Kingdom. So China has a very different, they have a very different way of viewing history. They have a very, very long time preference. And there's one book I always recommend reading on China, which is Oracle Bones, which is written by a journalist rather than a historian. And I think why I recommend it is that his style of writing gives you a very broad view of Chinese culture. So what I say is, if you're going to read one book, have it be Oracle Bones. And he goes into the whole history, which is a huge task, but he does a good job. And China, like many other places in world history, in certain places, this doesn't work out forever, but they were not concentrating on expanding endlessly. They were not concentrating on improving. They were concentrated on retaining, and they said this very explicitly, on continuing their existence as they currently were. So that's how they were. That's why sometimes these technologies, there's examples of in Europe and in the US of like new technologies, emperors realizing or kings realizing that the new technology has some sort of destabilizing factor to it, and they'll get rid of it, maybe kill the person. That happens a lot.
Interesting.
So like and you can find this within a lot of the spiritual and philosophical teachings in China. You have a few main ones: Taoism, legalism, ancestor worship, Confucianism, and Buddhism as well. And they all work together. Certain of them are propped up at certain times, other than other at certain times, and then others at other times. But China very much wants to remain like just hanging out, just doing its thing perpetually. So they had the largest fleet in world history ever, even compared to fleets today. At any point, even World War II, they had a fleet of thousands of ships, some of them as large as cities, thousands of people on them, and they burned that entire fleet in the 16th century. In the 16th century. They fully had the technology, the capabilities to get all around the world, but their culture was restrained in a good way, to have them not do that. The other thing is that like Chinese products were the most desired thing in Europe for a very long time. In the archaeology that I've done in 19th century, 17th century, 19th and 17th. I don't know if I've ever done 18th century actually, but I think I've done 17th and 19th century. You will find Chinese pottery and imitation Chinese pottery in these archaeology sites, because people in New England in the 17th century and into the 19th century, the 18th as well, they want Chinese products. Like it's recognized in Europe at this time, and this is forgotten today, but like this is what leads to this trade deficit where Europe is buying these products from China, and they've been buying them for a long time, and now this new idea of legalism comes out. And England is buying all this tea now, and they're buying this tea and these goods from China, and all of their money flow is just going into China. A lot of it. And so
it's because the consumer goods came from the East, right? In general,
right,
or from the New World. Yeah.
Well, it's coming. The best goods, the most expensive goods, are coming from China. So the silk, the China, as in the plates, the silk, the plates, all of the tea as well. It's all coming from China. Eventually, they go to India, but that took a while. It's all coming from China, and the British are like, we got to fix this. We got to go to China. We got to sell them something. And then the Chinese emperor is like, dude, I don't want your shit. Like, you're barbarians. We're the Middle Kingdom. I don't want your stuff. We have everything we need. Your stuff is going to screw up our whole deal. And that eventually turns into the Opium Wars. And then there's like a dozen 10 million plus dead in a dozen times 10 million plus people die in a civil war in like a few decades. But yeah, that's
You're honestly pitching a good bit for them being the good guys, honestly. Like, not like, but I mean,
well, they weren't the bad guys in that situation.
Yeah, I think, there's also obviously a desire to frame good and evil due to how we're socialized and the media we consume. But obviously, actors are just different, especially in geopolitics, right? And yeah, I really like how you frame that, because isn't porcelain is China? Is that one of the main? Or sorry, I could be wrong. Yeah. Well, another thing I wanted to, before I forget about
high quality porcelain specifically.
Weren't they able to make it to Africa when they had that huge ass fleet that you were talking about? I think maybe
I think at least they could have made it anywhere in the world.
They definitely made it to India.
Oh, yeah.
I remember. Yeah. So, because obviously seafaring, especially what we know now about global trade, that's floating goods is the most efficient, right? Because that you need on a trade ship, you only need 50 to 100 men you can man a trade ship with, and you can pack X amount of goods into it. So it's generally going to be a more efficient form of transit for international trade, for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Versus like, especially overland back then, where you have mules and
danger,
all of that kind of thing. Like, sail was an immense technological game changer. Absolutely.
Yeah, without roads, like it's massively cheaper. But yeah, so this is the fleet. There were these Ming. So the Ming dynasty after the Ming dynasty, forget it. The Qing dynasty, is that the one that's?
Yeah, I think that's how you pronounce it. Yeah,
they were.
The Ming was up until the 7th. 16th century. Was because different dynasties obviously took over. I think the Manchu were like northern barbarians, so they would actually let the barbarians rule, but then the barbarians become. I mean, in terms of like they took the Manchu took over is what I'm saying. They took the seat of the empire, and everyone. There wasn't a huge, enormous like civil war, right? It was like a coup, right? Like obviously they won. But yeah, so essentially these steppe horde lords would rule over China, and over time they would become more Chinese.
Right. They would get Sinicized. Yeah, and like, this is pretty common everywhere, where steppe people come in and they become the rulers of a place, but then over time they just integrate into the culture. Like
Kublai Khan was the Mongol ruler of China, but he was the son of Genghis, I believe, or maybe the grandson.
I think it was the grandson. Kublai.
Yeah, but he's very famous.
Yeah. Okay, there's a comment. I've been having to read up a lot on the Qing dynasty just to understand what's happening in Chinese period drama. Very complex and foreign to the West. Yeah, dude, I've read a dozen books on China. I don't get it. It's a weird place, man. Asians are different. It's just different.
It's
Very
you
different.
know how every story we've been brought up with has a sense of universalism to it, like whether it be a connection to Christianity, even if it's quote unquote a secular story. The hero's
Yeah.
journey, is connected to the Greeks of old. That was their story they created. So there's kind of this European tradition we're all brought up in. So it's our understanding of the world is this collective unconscious, as Carl Jung called it. And then the Chinese and the Eastern civilizations have an entirely different understanding of the world
Yeah.
because of their collective, and that's probably like calligraphy and obviously like not being connected to Latin with their language and everything has been a big separator, obviously, but it's
Yeah.
also just the collective history for sure.
It's so different. And like my argument is always that if there was an alien race who came down and they looked at the world and they wanted to pick somebody to talk to, they're not going to talk to these crazy ass Western leaders. They're not talking to Biden. They're not talking to Netanyahu. They're not talking to freaking Prime Minister Blackface in Canada. They're not doing it. They're not talking to the UK or France. Maybe France, maybe the UK, but way less likely they're going to go to China and they're going to talk to the Chinese because the Chinese civilization is the most resilient civilization of all time. I mean, the Chinese Empire in its current form, not really its current form, but mostly its current form and area, they were contemporaries of the Roman Republic. Like it's
Yeah.
insane. It's absolutely insane. They're contemporaries of the American Empire, the British Empire at its height, the the Roman Republic, the Roman Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire, all of them, and everybody else falls. They don't. I mean, they
I
do. They
really,
come right back.
I really like that you have this map up now because it also illustrates the geography of what we're talking about too. So I'm sure
Yeah,
this kind of like quote unquote isolationism was due to geography as well. So you see Indochina, which is Vietnam and Thailand and all those
yeah,
areas. Those were difficult to penetrate from the north due to jungle, the different terrain, barriers.
this
So that's generally why they stayed like fairly autonomous compared to like the Chinese region, like greater proper China that we're looking at now. Like, yes, there's been ebbs and flows in like larger extent or smaller extent, but like that's generally been the boundary of China for like a long ass time.
yeah.
Like,
So like, and to be honest, it's been the heartland of the Han Chinese, and the Chinese do heavily view themselves as a racial people. There's a quote from Xi Jinping calls themselves the people of the dragon, the yellow race, and that's his words, not mine. Not that I'm above calling Asian people yellow. I think it's funny. I don't care. We say black and white. Why don't we say yellow and
yeah,
red?
this is
But I
YouTube.
digress.
It's YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, but you see here that around these two rivers, the Yangtze and the Huanghe, these rivers in Beijing and up to the Great Wall, this is like the heartland of China. This is of Han China. And then you have this area up here. This is the steppes. This is Mongolia. A lot of Mongolia is actually within China now. They own it. More, I
Yeah.
think, more Mongolians live in China, but 10% of their population is minorities, and their minorities are not like our minorities in the sense that our minorities are either African Americans, and I say African American from the to make a distinction from like later black immigrants
Mhm.
because they're descended from freed slaves. That's African Americans,
Yeah.
and then like other immigrants. Whereas in China, these minorities are largely people that were like they're a remnant of Chinese imperialism. So they're minority peoples that are not Han Chinese, but they're living in their ancestral lands, more or less, depending. But they're not Han Chinese. But yeah,
Right.
this whole area
They've been
here,
there for a long time too, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Right. Okay.
So like this area here, this is all mountains. This is jungle, and it's all minorities in this area. I mean, even down here, the second largest. Well, I think I don't know if it's Cantonese people. If they're still hot, if they're still Han. I think they are still Han, but they speak Cantonese. They're different. This is around Hong Kong and Macau and southern China. But I mean, this is jungle. It's all minorities. It's all minorities outside of this area. The majority of the land is just much less dense because this is steppe. It's all plains. This is mountains in the west in Xinjiang and Tibet, and then over French Indochina, which is what it's a map from 1850. But yeah, above Vietnam and Myanmar and India and Bangladesh, what's Bangladesh now? There's a bunch of minorities that used to just be under China's sphere of influence. Now they're under China proper, and but even like Vietnam and Myanmar and all these other places, the Chinese tributary system had dozens of minor peoples in it. They like
Yeah.
it was everybody. They were really the Middle Kingdom.
Yeah.
Yeah, you brought up China.
They had the different a lot of different steppe peoples would pay tribute. There's obviously, like we talked about earlier, there was times where they would take over and become not the majority ethnic group, but the ruling elite, temporarily. I think there's also, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't Korea kind of a source of a lot of concubines with the emperorship? I think they were very like sought after. I could be, I might have misread.
I just don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think there was a lot of, how there's been like different ethnic, like the Ottomans sought after like Greek or Ukrainian women, and then the Chinese kind of sought after Korean women, from what I understand. So that's why there's obviously always like a DNA swapping between different like ethnic groups and that kind of thing. And there's no like definite line. There's a gradient, right? But that, from what I read, I'm not an expert on that or anything. I found that interesting.
Well, Korean culture is like based on Chinese culture. It's like, and obviously there's its own specific distinctions, but like when the Manchurian dynasty was ruling China, the Koreans looked at themselves as like the holdouts of civilization, like because they were studying the true Han Chinese stuff. Like they were heavily, and if there's a Korean person in the comments, they're probably going to light me up for this, but that's like a big, like the Korean, this is in the past, I don't know how much it is today, their like academic tradition is based on like Chinese poems and academic work for a long time. Yeah, I don't know about the concubine thing. That could be totally possible. I just wouldn't know. But what else?
Hey Sam, you cut your video cut out. You're good.
Yeah, no, I got it.
Okay.
Yeah, I love China, man. China's very interesting.
And obviously Japan stayed relatively a fishbowl because it's an island. It's a giant island, right? So it has this extremely distinct culture. And it's interesting how Japanese feudalism is like pretty damn close to like European feudalism was. It's like pretty cool. Yeah, how it like they were I mean everything.
It's patronage that works.
It's the most important political relationship is between patron and client, and you can't get that.
And it just happened to manifest in a similar way. That's always been a thing, man. That islands are weird. I mean, you go down to like even other stages of not stages. That's the wrong word to do it. But like, for example, the Haida in the Pacific Northwest. They're one of the weirdest people in North America. They had slavery. They wore wooden armor. They're sometimes called the pirates of the Americas, like because they would like dress in crazy wooden armor and go slave raid and grab people. Very interesting. I just did a thread on them, and they fought a war with the Russians. Actually, they got rocked after they took out a fort. But it was closer than you might think, because it's like the Russians were out there. They had their Aleutian allies, the natives that live in those islands that come out of Alaska.
Oh yeah.
They had a bunch of those guys with them, but they're not. The Haida were fighters as a culture, and I don't know as much about the Aleutians as I know about the Haida, but I doubt that they were as much of a martial culture. They eventually did win because of basically having a ship that was shelling the fort that the Haida were in. But people on islands are always weird. It's just a thing. There's something about it. There's an island off the coast of Connecticut where I've done archaeology in Connecticut mostly. And that island is like even back then, even back in the 17th century, like the Native Americans that lived on the mainland were like, yeah, those dudes on that island, they're fucking weird. It's a real thing.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the Vikings were fucking weirdos. Like essentially, not that they lived in islands, but they were very. I mean, they might as well have like living on boats essentially out at sea for as long. You're gonna be a weirdo. You're gonna be in a extremely like insular culture.
Yeah,
So
yeah, absolutely. In the snow, you're locked out from everything else. I think the Faroe Islands have something weird. Um, Taiwan is interesting because Taiwan, where it used to be called Formosa, like relatively recent Han Chinese expansion there. It's actually the people that are from Taiwan, like the indigenous people of Taiwan were Polynesian, related to the same people at Rapa Nui.
mhm.
So like that's how far they spread out. And I've only read about it a little bit. I don't know if this is like fully confirmed, but I think the origin of the Polynesians is in Japan, and they went down over time with the Ainu indigenous people of Japan. And I think that the population of Japan was heavily replaced. There's so much going on in Asia, just as there
Yeah.
is in Europe and Africa, that it's like
Mhm.
there's so much stuff that we don't understand.
Well, and there's a lot of populations that have been integrated, right? Like genetically speaking over
Mhm.
time. Like they may have been hunter gatherers, but then they're pretty much just as Japanese,
Right.
as the people there now. They this is a little bit off topic. Do you mind? I know you can pull stuff up on your screen.
Mhm.
Isn't there a case in Taiwan where they found a ancient humanoid that was more like a hobbit type person? I think that was in Taiwan. It's definitely in East Asia, but I think I I don't know if you heard about that, but I knew it's very fascinating
It's just a jawbone.
case. Yeah.
Maybe I don't know if this is the thing you're talking about.
This is Taiwan?
Denisovan,
Let's see.
possibly. Yeah,
Possibly
Taiwan.
7. Yeah.
Um,
Sorry, I
Tengu.
would have had. I'll get a hashtag source for you tomorrow, but
Yeah, this is from 9 years ago. Taiwan fossil may have come from unknown human species. Hmm, interesting. That's
so I
very
think
interesting.
there's obviously
Oh,
more humanoids than
wait, maybe it's this.
Denisovians, and oh,
Well,
oh,
Denisovans
really?
are still humanoids, right?
Yeah, yeah. There's the Aborigines have like.
I think the
What's up, Fred?
Bionicles are from a similar culture.
Um, yeah, I think interesting. Denisovans have a high percentage of DNA in Aborigines, so I think they were pretty like prominent. There's a lot of interbreeding uh, between like Denisovans and Homo sapiens, like in East Asia, like a long time ago.
Yeah. I
So
was reading something about Neanderthal DNA in Asians, though, which is surprising to me because I thought that the Neanderthals were only in Europe. Thought that was like
I know
our.
Neanderthals were in the equivalent of the Middle East, Israel, and
Mhm.
Egypt too.
Oh,
But there was I yeah, uh, there was certainly a widespread. I haven't heard about Neanderthal DNA in Asia. I'd find it perfectly possible, plausible,
well,
but
it's all in. It's. I don't know. I thought that was like a special thing white people had. I thought we all had our own. I mean, Africa's got their own specifics, and
yeah,
then
yeah.
Europe. I thought Europe gets the Neanderthals, and then
Did you
Asia gets the Denisovans. I thought that's how it was.
did you
Like,
hear that? Like a lot of the champion powerlifters have like a really high percentage of Neanderthal DNA. Like the Mountain from Game of Thrones. Apparently, he has a higher than average Neanderthal
see,
like
that actually
DNA.
that makes perfect sense because there's Neanderthals compared to modern humans they're pretty similar. They were pretty different based on the archaeological finds of their living situations, culturally pretty different from Homo sapiens. They were a little bit more
They weren't as
what's the
cooperative,
word?
right?
They weren't as cooperative. No, they didn't
Yeah.
live in as large of groups, which and they didn't have as high of density. There's one situation where I think it's the Alps, and what you find is that on one side of the mountain and the other side there are Neanderthal DNA, Oh, thank you so much, Enchiladas. I appreciate that. Again, you do not have to donate money. It's always appreciated, but not necessary.
Merch fund.
Yeah, merch fund. And on each side of the Alps, there are these Neanderthal archaeological sites, and they find that there aren't similarities between the cultural goods that are on one side and the other when it's a Neanderthal, but then when the Homo sapiens replace those Neanderthals, then there is a cultural exchange, and there are similarities between those archaeological sites from the same time period, demonstrating that they were talking or they were communicating and trading back and forth, whereas the Neanderthals weren't. They lived in
Okay.
smaller groups.
Yeah.
They were more solitary, and this probably was why they were replaced by Homo sapiens, because Homo sapiens were living more densely. But a Neanderthal in modern clothes and modern grooming could fit right in. They might look like a Joe Rogan, basically.
Yeah.
They were
Maybe a little
stouter.
thicker neck, bigger nose,
Yeah.
maybe. Yeah.
Well, they were more robust, meaning that they had denser bones, thicker bones. So this is a archaeology term, robust. But it would make sense to me that a power lifter would have more Neanderthal DNA in them, because that would provide them with denser and stronger bones and more support.
And I mean, it makes sense that you would have to be stouter if selection pressure, if you were more isolated, you would have to be stronger. You couldn't rely on the collective.
Mm,
Like, nobody was going to set your own arm for you if it broke, that kind
right.
of thing.
Right. Yeah, that makes
But
sense.
yeah.
And there's also that what you find is that there seems to be a less of a division of labor between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens between the sexes. So there were there was study on archaeologists can study the bone wear patterns. So from your muscles, certain what's up, Big Yehuda? How you doing? Um, certain certain muscle movements that you do over and over again will wear on the bones in certain ways. So
Yeah.
they know when archaeologists look at a bone, if there is a bone wear pattern that is consistent with a certain action, like throwing a spear or an atlatl, or pushing a whatever it is.
Mhm.
This is technical stuff that I don't know, but I know that they do that. And what they found was that the Homo sapiens or that the Neanderthals women had bone wear patterns similar to men in a certain archaeology site. So there's like there is evidence that the Neanderthal women were more likely to hunt, which does make sense
Hmm.
when you think of a people that are not as they don't have as if there's less people, there's less it's less possible to divide the labor up between people, and they're also more
Yeah.
robust and more capable of hunting from absolute terms,
Hmm.
not relative terms. A male Neanderthal is still going to be like better suited for hunting than a female,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
suited enough, and there probably isn't enough labor for them to
That's
divide
fascinating.
like that.
I wonder, I mean, I would like to know, obviously there's some things we'll never know, but how monogamous they were or whatever. Like, did they have, like, I mean, not that that's like that big of a deal per se, but it's like, if I have a hard time imagining Neanderthal mama bear like holding a kid in one arm and a spear in the other. Like, yeah, you do it if you have to. But like going out there with the baby under your arm, like that'd be pretty freaking tough.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, it's we'll never know. So
yeah.
like that there's no evidence, like there's not the evidence for something like that when it's that old, it just doesn't exist. So, we can speculate.
Yeah.
Well, there might be some. I don't know. I can't think of a way. There might be a way, but that stuff's really,
Do
really
a bunch of
cool.
shrooms and go through a portal and see the
Dude,
past, maybe. I don't know.
where the robust toes at? Big booty bitches, Chase. This is my buddy from middle school. Like
This guy knows what's up.
no, he does. We used to like I don't know how old you are, but there was this song, I think it was on like Tosh.0 in like 2011, where these two black dudes are just singing "We Got Big Booty Bitches,"
Yeah,
and we would just
I'm
say
only
that
a
shit
couple
to
years
each
older
other.
than you. Yeah, I was a big
Okay.
Tosh. I was a
Yeah.
Tosh, so yeah.
That was the best. Yeah, where the robust hose at? Why didn't I think about that? Yeah, the robust. Look, the difference between Neanderthals. You got this question: who was hotter though, Homo sapiens or Neanderthals? Um,
I mean,
if you like thick chicks, it's Neanderthals. They're going to be more robust. They're going to be the big booty bitches. The Neanderthals are more likely. What were you saying?
but I would take both of those over the Bantu, I guess. But I'll take what I can get.
Jeez, yeah, where the robust hose at? That's gonna be stuck in my head. That lives in my head rent free now. I'm gonna be like reading a paper on like hominid, which I rarely do, but it's gonna happen. It doesn't matter how long it is.
Dude, we should do
where the robust hose at.
Dude, a month or two or something. We should do a like pre-hominid or hominid stream. That would be dope.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I don't know a lot about that stuff, but
well,
like,
me either.
If
but...
I did some research, we could go into it.
Yeah, that'd be
it's
cool.
The archaeology stuff is great, but it's not and I have done archaeology. I know a little bit about it, but like my concentration is way more in cultural and I'm way more interested in it.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, where are the robust hose at? All right. Well, I think that's good. You want to do your plugs?
Yeah. Check us out at wbsapparel.com. Buy some shit. Help support our guys. We got Bog Beef and Merrick, good old boys, friends of this podcast as well as others. Like, go support them. Dan Baltic, Axios, Archcast. Yeah. The list goes on. Napoleon Bonaparte, go give him a follow on Twitter. He's a great guy. Love that guy.
Yeah.
And am I missing anybody? Oh yeah, Old Glory Club guys, Pony Express Radio, and then of course we got our own stuff that's awesome. So. Yeah, thanks for having me on, Sam. It was actually really fun. Yeah, that was cool.
Actually, really fun. You didn't expect it to be?
No, I thought it was gonna be lame as fuck.
Yeah, no, most people do. Yeah. So, like, look in the comments in the Discord. Tell me what merch you want to see, so that me and Max can get something started. And I'm gonna answer this final question. Or not even a question, a comment. I can imagine the Neanderthal men just mogging their sapien ops. Yeah, definitely. So the Neanderthal men, one-on-one, they're going to most likely destroy a Homo sapien. The thing is, again, multiple Homo sapiens, they tag up, they jump him, they're going to take him down. But so I don't quote me on this because I don't remember if it's true, but I'm pretty sure that there was a mix. Like if you mixed a Neanderthal man and a Homo sapien woman, the child would not survive. But if you did the other way around and a Homo sapien man with a Neanderthal woman, it was okay. And I think I know you meant for sexual competition. Totally. I totally get that.
Yeah.
But if a Neanderthal man had relations with a Homo sapien woman, it would destroy the pelvis of the Homo sapien woman because it's too large, too robust, far too robust. Uppies wins. Yeah, death by snoo snoo, right? That's what we're looking for out here. Yeah, I want some Gina Carano looking ass bitches. Oh, you can't mix, trust me, says the mixed guy in the comments. Yeah. All right, guys. We are all set. I should start a anthropology magazine called Nationalist Geographic.
Based. Nationalist
Geographic. That is hilarious. Yeah, I should do that. All right. I'm just gonna keep reading the comments if I don't do this, so I gotta end it. Okay.